Vader's castle on Mustafar is one of the coolest locations added to Star Wars in the past 10 years. We visited it multiple times in Rogue One, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and several comics. The new edition of Star Wars Complete Locations gives us an even better look. The reference book is out right now in the UK and will be released in the US on March 11th. DK Publishing gave us an early look at this specific spread, so I wanted to dive into what's inside Fortress Vader, the castle's purpose, and its history. First, let's talk about why it was made and why it looks the way it does. It was designed by an ancient Sith artist named Darth Momin. He was a disturbed, Force-sensitive artist from about 1,000 years before Vader's time. He was discovered by the Sith Lady Shah, who trained him as her apprentice until, of course, he killed her. He was different from many other Sith because he wasn't interested in galactic domination as much as he wanted to use death and destruction to express himself artistically. Momin attacked a city with a superweapon that was intended to freeze people in a perpetual state of agony, but he was stopped by the Jedi, and his spirit wound up embedding itself into his helmet. The helmet was hidden away in the Jedi Archive's Darkside collection for safekeeping, and was eventually found by Darth Sidious, who then gave it to Vader. Anyone who wore the mask would become possessed by Momin, and so Vader was able to work with the fellow Sith. They designed the castle to reach the netherworld of the Force with the goal of reaching and resurrecting Padme. There were many failed attempts, but the final dual-pronged tuning fork design was meant to resonate with the Force through a darkside nexus that sat at the castle's base. Within the walls were plates covered in Sith runes that connected all the way down to the focusing chamber. Through the use of some sort of dark force multiplier system, Momin's design did work, but he betrayed Vader and resurrected himself instead. Vader quickly killed his rival, but then made his own attempt to reach the netherworld. Within that mystical realm, Vader had to quite literally fight through his own past and all the steps that led him to becoming a Sith Lord. He eventually did reach a vision of Padme, but he failed to resurrect his wife and was left with nothing. So that was the initial purpose of the castle. Despite the failure, Vader remained and made it his new headquarters. Back to the near top of the fortress, right where the building split into prongs, was Vader's throne room. We see him sitting there taking holocalls in Obi-Wan Kenobi. About halfway down the tower is the audience chamber where he meets with Orson Krennic in Rogue One. Nearby is, of course, his bacta chamber where he hangs out, pun intended, and continues to heal the extensive burns to his skin. But there's no healing the damage to his lungs. Right beneath that is where all the bacta is stored. It's a small part of the page, but the design and color looks like it does in the Crimson Reign comics, when the Knights of Ren infiltrate the fortress to steal something. I'll come back to that later. Below the bacta storage is Vader's armor suit maintenance room. It looks like he actually suits up in the bacta tank room, but if the armor gets damaged or if it needs some improvements, we've seen Vader working on the suit in the Darth Vader comics. The aesthetic changes of the armor we see over the course of the original trilogy can be chalked up to upgrades he made in between movies. The main hall is situated right above the base of the tower, lit by red stained glass windows and what looks like a chandelier of red kyber crystals. It could be kinda like the large crystal that helps illuminate the Jedi Temple on Ilum, which also melts the ice wall. The floor itself held the burned remains of one of Padme's starships. When Vader decided to build his fortress on Mustafar, Palpatine gave him the old Nubian vessel, and during entry to the volcanic planet, the shields failed, allowing the extreme heat to tarnish the chromium hull. Apparently, Vader decided to incorporate the reminder of his lost love into the construction. Also found in the main hall is a collection of Sith artifacts which look like they're out on display. Something this image doesn't highlight is a vault full of artifacts guarded by Vader and the troopers stationed there. It's probably up closer to bacta storage and the observation hall. During the Knights of Ren's infiltration, they break into the vault and steal a key that later unlocks a Sith weapon called the Fermata Cage, which also happened to be a creation of Darth Momin's. Only some of the knights escape with their lives. Beneath the main hall were the stormtrooper barracks. The bulk of the Imperial forces there were volcanic environment stormtroopers, more commonly referred to as lava troopers. They wore black heat-shielded armor, and their helmets had additional tubes to help them breathe in the harsh Mustafarian climate. A hangar for shuttles and TIE fighters was right beneath the barracks. Nearby sat the main entrance, which was connected to the landing platform outside. A staircase connected the entrance to the main hall. Traveling further down led to the castle's power generators, which worked thanks to a lava dam. Lava flowed in through gates, down a penstock, and into generators and spinning turbines, providing the entire fortress with energy. On the other side, lava poured out in a massive lava fall. Fortress Vader was said to be constructed overlooking the site of where Anakin lost many of his limbs to Obi-Wan Kenobi, so it just recently dawned on me that this could be the very cliff that Anakin and Obi-Wan nearly went over in Revenge of the Sith. I'm not fully convinced, but it makes some geographic sense, or it could be farther upstream than where his duel with Obi-Wan actually took place. Anyway, this chamber was also home to a nexus of the dark side of the Force, which I mentioned earlier. In fact, Darth Vader visited the site well before he ever built his castle to bleed his first lightsaber crystal, and then returned years later to construct the fortress. This is another location seen by the Knights of Ren during their break-in. Here they encountered a shadow of the dark side, witnessing a false image of Darth Momin, similar to the vision Luke experiences of Darth Vader on Dagobah. So the Knights of Ren had quite the journey, entering down near the base of the castle, traveling all the way up to back to storage, then across the observation hall, into the unmapped vault, and then leaping out the other side to escape. Beneath the dark side locus was even more, including an elevator that connected to excavations further beneath the surface. In the VR game Vader Immortal, you play as a smuggler that's one of the final living descendants of Lady Corvax. She was a Force-sensitive leader of Mustafar from long ago that attempted to use a relic called the Bright Star to resurrect her fallen husband. Vader sends you to explore the ancient ruins to find the Bright Star, which he hopes to use to resurrect Padme, but he fails once again. Near the elevator, Darth Vader's attendant, Vinay, had a lava fume laboratory. The comic Shadow of Vader's Castle tells us that he was once a normal Imperial officer, but when he visited Fortress Vader for an inspection, he breathed in the toxic fumes and they drove him insane. He became fervently loyal to Vader and the dark side, and it makes sense that he would spend his downtime researching and experimenting with the lava fumes. He seemingly became more and more insane and remained loyal to his master long after his death. Outside of the castle grounds was a lake of lava that was home to a mystical being called the Eye of Webbish Bog. Vader interacted with it a handful of times and eventually entrusted it with the safekeeping of his Sith Wayfinder, which pointed the way to Exegol. By the time of the First Order, Fortress Vader still stood. Vinay continued to look after it, and it was guarded by darkside cultists named the Elasmec of Winzit. Vinay was present when Kylo Ren paid the castle a visit, slaughtering several Elasmec. He intended to destroy the building, seeing it as a symbol of the past, but Vinay convinced him instead to explore the past of his grandfather to help him learn how to better harness his pain and rage. And by that point, he was basically just a head attached to a droid. Kylo Ren would return to Mustafar after learning of Emperor Palpatine's resurrection. While he didn't venture into the castle, he did fight his way through more Elasmec and Corvax Finn so he could confront the Eye of Webbish Bog himself and retrieve his grandfather's Wayfinder. But that takes us through the history of Vader's castle and all the major points of interest highlighted by the new edition of Complete Locations. The reference book is out now in the UK and comes out on March 11th in the US, written by Simon Beecroft, Carrie Doherty, Jason Fry, James Lucino, Kristen Lund, and Emily Shkukani, with art by Richard Chasemore, Maxim Degtyarev, Hans Jensen, Sofiane Mumine, John Mulaney, and Kempra Millard. If you want to take a better, closer look at the Vader's Castle spread from the book, I put it up on our Patreon as a free public post so anyone can go look at it. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on our socials. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.